You have found the right place. And this is Cevin ORMOND, Cevin with a C, Conversations with Cevin with a C. Common sense leadership principles for the 21st century. And welcome everybody. As I promised in this show, I'm going to talk about the law of precession. This is Precession, precession, not procession. That's a funeral. This is precession. Okay, and so we're not gonna talk about a funeral today. We're talking about precession. Now, you've got to understand, I've got an electrical engineering degree. Science has been a big part of my life, and this is real science. This is not people who are sellouts for tenure and sellouts for funding, which there's a lot of those, and we won't spend too much time about that today. But we may get into that later. That's and there's also another difference is with engineers are about making things work, and scientists and mathematicians are about exactness, which you can never achieve in the real world. So, I'm always about what does it work? Is it practical? Will it work? Can we make it work? And that's where I'm focused on. So, as I mentioned before, I'm not going to really sugarcoat it. I'm not going to lie to you. And we're going to talk about today, as promised, the law of precession. Now, here's what this is about. First of all, you've got to picture in your mind a gyroscope. I think, certainly everybody my age and maybe most of you have seen or played with one. We used to have them as a toy all the time, and they were fun. And, you spin them really hard, and there's this force when you try to turn them that resists everything. And of course, they're used in navigational systems. These days, the systems technology is a little beyond that. But back in the days of Apollo, that's how they navigated. They had 3 gyroscopes at 3 different angles, 90 degrees to each other in 3 dimensions, and they had to set those. So what they would do is they would align the spacecraft with a fixed point like the North Star, for example. And then they'd set all the gyroscopes from that point. And that's how they were able to navigate to the moon and back, is with these spinning physical gyroscopes. That's how it was actually done. So these things are very powerful, and airplanes used to be full of them and stuff. These days, of course, everything is next generation technology with strain gauges and all kinds of fun things that are different. But at that time, that was how it was used. And of course, we played with them as a kid, as I mentioned. And so you spin this thing up, and then you set it on a pedestal, and it just sits there. Now there'll be a little friction, and maybe the cage around it will start to spin a little bit along with that, depending on how much friction is in the bearings. But a really good one doesn't have much of that going on. Now here's the deal: if that thing is straight up and down, it'll just sit there. But if you put it in an angle so that it's, let's say it's off, it's not straight up and down, it's off to the side, maybe 20 degrees or something like that, then what'll happen is it doesn't just sit there at that place. It'll start to rotate around the pedestal, around that end, and that's called precession. Now, the reason that does that is because of the way the forces work. So you've got that gyroscopic force is holding it up at that angle, but it has to resist gravity to do so. When it does that, it creates a third force at 90 degrees, and that 90-degree force causes it to walk around the pedestal. And if it's spinning one direction, it'll walk one way, and if it's spinning the other direction, it'll walk the other way. And that's the law of precession. But the thing that I want you to understand is that side force that's created in response to the gravity is at 90 degrees to the angle of the spin, or the axis of the spindle in the thing. So that's why it makes it move, is because now there's a side force that's causing it to go sideways at 90 degrees. And so what that means to us in the law of precession is this. You see, we are all trained to focus on our goals. Okay, and if you're not trained to focus on your goals, you better get trained to focus on your goals, because you ain't going to get them if you don't do that. I mean, let's get real about that. But and focus is key. You see, A very, very smart man. One of the smartest men that has lived in my lifetime is a man named Hugh Nibley. Hugh Nibley said that the most important thing that has come out of modern psychology is proof of the fact that human beings can truly only focus on one thing at a time. Multitasking, folks, is a myth. You cannot multitask. Not with mental things. You can with things that are not mental. For example, this morning it occurred to me, I'm in the shower. I'm thinking about this show. I'm washing my hair. I may or may not have been relieving myself in the shower. You can do multiple things at the same time. If they are things that I was breathing, all these things, you can do multiple things at the same time, but not things that require focus. The thing I was focused on was things I was talking about and would be talking about today. And so one of the things I focused on was the fact that there I was multitasking with things that don't require much attention. And so you can do that. But in terms of things that really engage you, you can only do one at a time. And anybody who says otherwise is mistaken. The other thing that happens is that most people may not know this. Computers can only do one thing at a time, too. One instruction at a time. See, computers are really, really, really stupid. They do precisely what you told them to do, not what you wish you told them to do, not what you thought you told them to do, but exactly what you told them to do. They're not bright enough to figure it out. And they do precisely what they're programmed to do, no more, no less. And they aren't very smart, but they're really fast about it. And that's the key, is because they can go from instruction to instruction extremely fast. And so they're able to do things that in our experiential time frame seem to be instantaneous and seem to be like they are multitasking, but in fact they're not. What they do is they'll work on a little bit of this program for a small period of time, then they'll switch and work on that program for a small period of time, then they'll switch and work on that program for a small period of time, and then they'll come back to the first one. And so they kind of rotate around these things, and at our slower time frames, it appears that they are doing multiple things at once, but in fact they're not. And that's not only true with computers, but of course it's true with us. And so multitasking is a myth. If you tell me you're really great at multitasking, you know what you just told me? You're mediocre at everything. You cannot get really, really good at something if you are not focused. And so focus is a key element. Now, back to the idea then of the law of precession. So here's the deal: we're trained to focus on this goal, and that's great. And in geometry, the shortest distance from where you are to where you want to be is a straight line, and that's great in geometry, but it doesn't work in the real world very often. Typically, what's going on in the real world is that we are, there's a zigzag path. And it's like I learned how to scuba dive in 1974 in Guam when I was stationed there in the Air Force. I mean, think about this. You're 15 months on an island that is from 4 to 10 miles wide and 30 miles long, and everything around you is ocean. You can stop, you can tour around the island, stop and take pictures everywhere at all the high spots and even a lot of the low ones in about 3 hours. And I spent 15 months there. So, what are you going to do? So after the first day and you've seen everything, now what are you going to do? So I learned how to scuba dive. One of my roommates there in the Air Force was a dive instructor, and so he says I expressed an interest, and he handed me a book, and I read the book, and he quizzed me on the book, and we went down and got equipment, and the next thing I knew, I was 60 feet in the ocean, and it was crystal clear, 200-foot visibility, just unbelievable. I totally fell in love. It is still, to this day, my favorite activity in terms of sporting activities is scuba diving. In fact, I went a couple of months ago in St. Martin which was really great, and it was a great dive. Saw the biggest stingray I've ever seen in my life. Just his body was as big as a table, and his tail was probably 6 or 8 feet longer than that. Biggest one I've ever seen. And it's just a phenomenal experience. It really is. And sharks are so cool. I mean, let me tell you about sharks when you're in the water with them. Let me tell you about this. Okay. Have you ever seen a parked Ferrari? Now, when you look at that sucker, and it's just sitting there, but you just know that sucker is meant to go. It just looks fast sitting still. Okay, that's what a shark in the wild is like, and he's just kind of cruising. It's like, I'm bad, and he just kind of nice and cruise. He might have a remora or two on him, and he's just kind of cruising along. But you know that he can just flat out book it if he wants to go. And so it's just an amazing experience. I highly recommend scuba diving to everybody. Now, back out of the rabbit hole for a moment, and let's talk then about how this all ties in. Because you see, the straight line that we learn about from here to where we want to be in algebra is not the real world. When you're scuba diving, what happens is you come to, let's say, a big coral head or an obstacle. You got options. You can go around it on one side or the other. You can just go past it. You can actually go over it. So it's a three-dimensional experience. And sometimes they'll have a tunnel underneath. You can actually go through it under the tunnel. And things like a sunken ship, same kind of experience. You have options there that you don't have in the normal world on land because of the effect of gravity, but because you're in the water and you hit neutral buoyancy, you're effectively weightless, and so you can go any direction you want to go. So sometimes you're trying to go from this point to the next point, and there's an obstacle like that in the way. So you've got to go over it, around it, under it, somehow. You got to do that. Well, that's what it's like when you're going to your goals. There'll be obstacles in your way like that. And so you are not going to be able to go from this straight line to that straight line as a straight line point from here to your goals. In fact, the shortest distance in the real world between you and your goals is all kind of a squiggly path. And here's the deal. Your next opportunity is not on that straight line. It's off to the side at 90 degrees, just like that force in the gyroscope is off to the side at 90 degrees and moves it in that direction. That's also true as we progress toward our goals. Now, the key is you got to move. If you're just standing still, you'll never get there. You'll never see it. So you actually have to take that step, and sometimes you don't see your goal with your eyes. It's only with the third eye, the one in between, in the middle, that you can see it, your imagination. That's the most powerful of the three eyes anyway. I mean, I know blind people with a third eye that I envy. You know, I mean, their imagination is so phenomenal, and their ability to dream big is so phenomenal. One of the things that I do when I autograph books is I'll put a little saying, and sometimes I put this saying in there. It says, "Dream big and live bigger," and that's a very important thing. Is if you cannot see it in your mind and your imagination because it's out of sight physically, you'll never get there. And so we have to start with that. Stephen Covey talked about this. He said everything is created twice. First in your imagination, and then, in reality. So I'm sitting here looking at my iPhone, and that started in people's imagination. At some point, this was just in somebody's head. Part of it was in Steve Jobs' head, but there were others involved. And it just started in somebody's head. And now it's a physical object I hold in my hands, and it's a tool that I use almost constantly. So it started out, it was created twice. First in the imagination, first in the mind, and then in reality. Well, the same is true with all of our goals and dreams. And so we first create them in the mind, and and we dream big, and we imagine, and we feel like, oh, what would this feel like if I actually had the Ferrari, or if I actually, and I'm here to tell you, I don't own a Ferrari, but I've done a few things with them, and they are fun. People say, well, gosh, um, you're older or whatever else, and I said, yeah, well, kind of. You put me in 600 or horsepower or something like that, and all of a sudden I'm 16. Trust me, it's just boom, there I am. That's reality. Kind of think speed limits are suggestions. It's a number I see going up through it and back down through it, but it's not necessarily where I live. But the bottom line is that we're looking at these things and we are saying, okay, man, I'm going to picture this place I'm going to go. I'm picture this thing I want to accomplish. I'm going to picture whatever it happens to be. And we'll come back from a break in just a moment and talk more about this.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, host of the Five Kingdoms radio show right here on the Tribe of Kings Information Network. Be sure and tune in weekly to hear the latest and greatest on the Tribe of Kings, and also to learn all those things that you need to do to be the best that you can be.
Hello, I want to take this time to say thank you for tuning in and listening to the Tribe of Kings Information Network. My name is Jay Carlton, and I am the host of the Jay Carlton Show. On my show, I will be talking about the world of insurance, starting with what I like to call the 5 cores of insurance. This is whenever I'm sitting down with others, and these are the 5 top things that they always want to talk about. Come on in, take a listen.
Hello everyone, my name is Jay Walter, host of Rebuilding, a radio show right here on the Tribe of Kings Information Network. Be sure to tune in weekly to hear more about the Tribe of Kings and to learn how to overcome fear and rebuild your life every day as you become the man you want to be.
So we're back and we're talking about the idea of going from where you are to where you want to be, and your goals and your dreams and the power of imagination as we talk more about the law of precession. So, you're going to go from this direction, and it's never going to be a straight line. It's always a squiggly line. It's sideways and everything else. So here's the problem. When we focus, we tend to become very tunnel vision, and all I can see is my goal. Okay, and there's value to that at certain cases. When things are really, really difficult, you've got to have your mind on the goal and not on the mud at your feet that's dragging you down, or you'll never get there. So there are times when you do need to really focus that intensely and just get tunnel vision, and all you can see is that goal. But if you stay there, you miss all your opportunities because they're coming at the side at 90 degrees. So you've got to have your peripheral vision open, because virtually every phenomenal experience in my life and virtually every phenomenal opportunity in my life has come kind of what appears to be out of the blue, just kind of from the side. The law of attraction, I think, has got something to do with that. I'm focused on here, and God or the universe or whoever is running the law of attraction says, well, okay, Kevin, but listen, you need this piece too, or you need this piece first, and it comes in always from the side. And it's easy to get distracted and go off at Alice in Wonderland, and down the rabbit hole we go. But also, it's you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So what you have to do is look at these things that come in from the side and say, okay, is this a possibility, or is this really a great opportunity, or is this something that maybe this is really the next step in order to get me to my goal, even though it appears that I'm sidestepping rather than straight lining. And so the idea is I want to make sure and look at these things, but I have to have my peripheral vision open to be able to do that. The mind's like a parachute, works best when it's open, right? And so otherwise, remember we talked about the law of gravity last time. Gravity's going to win on that one. If you don't have that parachute open, it's going to win big time. And your skydiving career will be one jump. But anyway, that's kind of how that works. But you've got to stay focused on this thing, but you got to be open to these opportunities that come from the side, because so often what's happening is our picture of what's really there is too small. We haven't dreamed big enough. We haven't imagined big enough. We really aren't aware of how big what it is we're going for really can be and should be and is. And so we're focused on this little narrow part. I've seen a demonstration. I've done this myself in front of groups of people, where you hold a $100 bill up, and if you hold it close enough to your face, that's all you can see. And you cannot see the 1,000 people that are out there in the audience at all. All you can see is the money right here in front of you. Too often, our focus is too close, and maybe it's focused on money. And focusing on money is a good thing, especially at certain times and periods. You got to have it. I mean, it's a tool that is needed, and the more of that tool you have, the more things can speed up for you. I mean, it's an accelerator. In fact, money is a huge magnifier. People, good people with money do good things with their money. Bad people with money do bad things with their money. And it magnifies who you are because it takes away a lot of the limitations. And so, that's what it is. So that's why character counts so much, because if you're a good person anyway, then money's not going to hurt you. It's going to enhance you, and you're going to be able to go out and do a lot of good things with it. If your character is lacking, all those character flaws are going to bubble to the surface if you have the money, and you're going to end up. Let's see, Epstein's a real good example, who's just in the news recently, and a few others. That's what happens, and so we don't want to go there. But that's the concept, is to make sure that we are aware of that thing coming from the side, because that's where the next opportunity can come from. The reason I'm on this show, the reason I have this show, is because I had that peripheral vision open, and I said, okay, I've got some very specific things that I'm aiming for, and all of a sudden, first one person and then another said, hey, guy, you need a radio show. You need to do this. It's going to get a lot of good things going on in the world for others and for you as a byproduct. And so I looked at that and thought, okay. And then a little while later, somebody else says pretty much the same thing. And okay. And a little while later, somebody else says pretty much the same thing. And I'm thinking, okay, I keep hearing this message. Maybe I ought to get serious about it. And then the minute I said that, all of a sudden, this opportunity showed up. And here I am. I mean, that's just how it goes. Thank you, Brad. And thanks, Rick and Richard Paul Evans. Thanks, everybody that's involved in this opportunity being here for me to help you. And help you in a bigger way, because at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about. You see, we aren't compensated by the hour. If you're paid by the hour, you're underpaid, unless you're really lazy or a bozo or something. Then maybe you're overpaid. But yeah, there are a few of those too. But basically. You really, if you're set up right, you're compensated not by the hour, but by the value you bring to that hour. You get paid on the value you provide, not the time. And that's pretty important to understand. So by increasing our character, by improving our conduct, by improving our charisma, the three basic elements of leadership, by doing that, we increase our ability to bring more value. And by bringing more value, of course, your compensation goes up. So that's basically how that concept works. So with the law of precession, we want to make sure that we are paying attention to this. Remember, it's all about what will work and not what doesn't work. You've got to be moving forward, and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to trip and fall and face plant. The key is you just get up. So I fall down 16 times, get up 17. It's just that's basically what it boils down to, and we all have to realize that that's it. Because one of the key elements is the idea of persistence. Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich talks about a story about a guy in Colorado who had a gold mine, and he got this mining claim, and he's in there digging and digging and digging and digging and getting nothing and nothing and nothing and nothing and nothing. Finally, he just quits. He just gives up, sells his mine for next to nothing. This guy comes in and does something that the first guy didn't do. He hired a geologist and a mining engineer to take a look at this thing, and he said, "Oh, just looks like there's a good fault right over here. Just go over there." So he went in there and he dug 3 feet further, and he hit the richest gold strike that they'd ever had in Colorado to that time. It made millions and millions, which in today's dollars would be billions of dollars from this thing that the guy had quit 3 feet from. And so persistence. I'm going to keep going until I can't go any further. If something pulls me to the side because that's where the opportunity is to end around this obstacle, I'm gonna take a look at that and then go that direction. But I'll eventually be back on. I'm still focused on the goal. See, a very wise friend of mine one time said that you set your goals in concrete, but your plans in sand. And this is the same concept, because with my plans are in sand, I can just brush them away and make a new plan in the sand. Just draw it with a stick in the sand, and there it is. And so that's what precession enables me to do, that law of precession. Something new will come in, I'll look at that, and I'll redraw the plan in the sand that still gets me to the goal in concrete. And that's where I want to go with that thing. It's really a key element to make sure we're there. So that's what we want to take a look at is will that happen, and how can we make that go? And so what I'm going to do right now is take a break for just a minute or two, and then we'll come back and talk about another related aspect of this.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, host of the Five Kingdoms radio show right here on the Tribe of Kings Information Network. Be sure and tune in weekly to hear the latest and greatest on the Tribe of Kings, and also to learn all those things that you need to do to be the best that you can be.
Hello, I want to take this time to say thank you for tuning in and listening to the Tribe of Kings Information Network. My name is Jay Carlton, and I am the host of the Jay Carlton Show. On my show, I will be talking about the world of insurance, starting with what I like to call the 5 cores of insurance. This is whenever I'm sitting down with others, and these are the 5 top things that they always want to talk about. Come on in, take a listen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Walter, host of Rebuilding, a radio show right here on the Tribe of Kings Information Network. Be sure to tune in weekly to hear more about the Tribe of Kings and to learn how to overcome fear and rebuild your life every day as you become the man you want to be.
Hey, and this is Kevin Ormond. This is Conversations with Kevin with a C, and we're bringing you common sense leadership principles for the 21st century. We've been talking about the law of precession, and there are a lot of related things to this as well. So, as I mentioned, everything comes in from the periphery. Your next opportunity will come from the side, not from the direct line between you and your goals. Almost always. I mean, once in a blue moon it'll be in line, but hardly ever. So you don't want to lose the vision of the front either. When you don't go tunnel vision and then only side vision, you want to view the whole thing so that you can see everything from both sides and forward. And so, because that opportunity can come from any tangent, any direction, and that's where we need to be always aware of that, even though we stay focused on the goals. And so that's part of the problem is getting unfocused. Now, okay, yeah, everybody gets defocused occasionally, and some of us more frequently than occasionally. I'm attention deficit, in case you can't tell, and most people in my profession are to some degree. It's just kind of where we migrate to. It's either that or a rubber room. So we end up here, and. So that's kind of how it works. And some days I'm not sure I'm really not in a rubber room. I mean, it kind of feels like maybe I never really left. I don't know, but it's you kind of think, okay, well maybe reality is a myth and we're all dead and this is just a dream. I don't know, but I've heard people say that too. But I don't think that's the case. But at any rate, here we are. So there's some things related now to the law of precession. And one of those is, it's a matter of keeping the blinders up. But here's the deal. We suffer or are subject to another law called the law of selective perception. Here's what that means. With the law of selective perception, you do not perceive everything that's coming in at the same time at a conscious level. So let me give you an example. You did not feel your clothes on your body until right now. The minute I mentioned it, it brought it to your conscious attention. They were there. That input, well, maybe they weren't. I don't know. I can't see you. But probably they were. Mine were. So they were there. And that pressure on your skin from your clothing was there. But your perception fades that out so that you have more energy, more brain cycles, if you will, to focus on whatever it is that you're consciously choosing to focus on. If we didn't have selective perception, we would be absolutely overwhelmed by all the input in our environment all the time. This is good news and bad news. If you're driving down the road and texting, this can be bad news because you are not perceiving what's going on outside you as clearly as if you're focused on your driving. So just as an example, or whatever else happens, there's a lot of things that cause this, so you didn't feel your clothes on your body until I mentioned them, even though they were there. Your perception, at least at the conscious level, put that out of the way, and so you didn't hear it. And so that's the concept here with this selective perception. Now let me give you another example. Have you ever had the experience, I know I have, every time I buy a new car, all of a sudden I see a bunch of them on the road. It's like, okay, did everybody go out and buy a new Mercedes when I did? Okay, or were they already there and I just wasn't noticing them, or whatever else it happens to be. You understand what I'm telling you? Did everybody go out and buy, a yellow Mustang or whatever it is that you bought, whatever kind of car it is that you bought? Or were they always there and you just didn't notice them? because now you're tuned to that thing, because now you've got, look, all buying decisions are emotional. Anybody who tells you that is trying to flim-flam you, because the reality is that all decisions that human beings make are emotional. We are emotional beings. And what we do is we make a decision. Maybe we buy a car, maybe we pick a spouse, who knows. We make a decision based upon how we feel about it. Whatever it is. It feels good. And so we do it. It feels like it will get us the happiness that we seek. It feels like it will get us whatever it is that we're after. And so we make a decision based upon how it feels. And then what we do very quickly in our mind is we create a logical sounding, at least to us, rationalization, so that we can fool ourselves into thinking that we made a great logical decision. That's not reality. Nobody makes decisions logically. Computers do, but people don't. And so, but the programmer who programmed the computer may not have, and so then the computer is still not making necessarily a logical decision because it's on the second level. But at base level, it certainly does. However, people aren't like computers, and we're far more complex. We're far more valuable. We're far more so many things. Computer is just a tool, just like a hammer or any other tool. And so basically, the idea is we simply have to make sure that we understand that everything is emotional. So back to your car. You bought it because you fell in love with it. That's the bottom line. Now, maybe you would have loved a nicer car and your funds didn't allow you to get that. Okay. But based on whatever constraints you were operating under, you fell in love with that car or you wouldn't have bought it. Car salesmen know this. They look for this. When they see you falling in love with this automobile, they steer you in to sign the papers. I mean, that's just how it works. And so that's the concept. That's how they make their living. And it's not just car salesmen. People put car salesmen down, but I'll tell you what, you want to learn how to sell cars. I've not done it, but I've watched people that have, and they really are good. I've done enough sales to know when I see a good salesperson. And it's amazing what these people can do. But at the end of the day, a good salesperson, by the way, is somebody who helps you become conscious above your selective perception of what it is that you really need and what it is that you really want and what it is that you're really looking for, and then helps you find the best solution for that need or that problem or whatever else it is within whatever constraints there are, whether it's money or time or whatever other constraints you might have. So what they're really doing, a great salesperson is leading. They are a leader, and they are leading you to the place that is for your best good, given the circumstance that we're looking at that particular point in time. And so by so doing, they can be very well compensated. That's the idea. Now, I'm not saying that all salesmen are like that. As I said before, nothing's less common than common sense. And also, most people are lousy leaders. But the good ones, you can spot them. And the good ones, that's how they sell. That's how they do it. And it's really important to understand that. So this law of selective perception, here's your problem with the law of precession. As I mentioned earlier, okay, I'm focused here on my goal. I'm looking out to the sides so that I can see things that come in from the side. And all of a sudden, from the side shows up a red Corvette, right? Okay. Now, I'm not focused on a red Corvette, okay? I want a probably a red or a maybe there's a beautiful blue color, turbo Porsche Cabriolet. Okay, and that's what I'm hoping for. But now all of a sudden, this red Corvette shows up, and if you are too focused Your selective perception will just ignore that, and that may be your next step is go to the red Corvette, and then from there that opens the opportunity where you can get the Porsche. And so that's how, or the next step that gets you to whatever the goal is. And I'm just using cars as examples because I love cars, but it doesn't matter what example you use. The concept is still the same, and that is you've got to kind of look past your selective perception. You've got to shut down some of those filters to some degree, or you are going to miss your next opportunity because it's going to come in from the side, and it's not going to look like what you thought it was going to look like. And you've got to make sure that you notice it first, and then take a look at it and see if that really is that or just a rabbit hole and a distraction, because you don't want to go into too many of those. Sometimes the only way to tell is to step into it for a minute and then discover it's a rabbit hole. You back out of it and go down. Look, the only difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is successful people have made a lot more mistakes and learned from them. And so that's the idea. So here's the deal. We've got this law of selective perception, and it ties in directly with the law of precession. So as we go through this process, just understand that this is what's going to get you where you want to be, and keep that in mind. And that's that's one of the key leadership principles that I talk about and train people on. It's in my books. The Constitution of a Great Leader is my most recent book. It's available now on Amazon. And also, of course, I've been a professional speaker forever. And so bring me in, guys, and let's talk about how these principles apply to you. And we'll go from there. So listen, have a great one. And we will see you on the flip side.